All right, and welcome again to Survivor Space and today's Survivor Circle. And I am going to turn it over to my friend John Michael to get us started. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for letting us have this platform today. I'm trying to remain calm because I'm so excited. Today we have an award-winning actress, an entrepreneur, a real estate mogul, and now she's a coach and trainer. But I have to share something really quick with everybody because this is just something that where did it go? Maybe I can share it. There it goes.
There it is.
Oh my gosh. Carrie and I actually appeared on a show called On Pine Knolls, which was a play, and we were actually the one of the original cast to do it, and it has gone on to do some other wonderful things. But there we are playing husband and wife.
Yeah.
Um, I would love someone to put a caption in the chat what you would say is happening right now, or anything. I think that would be great. So, last lookies. Bye
Yep.
bye.
Oh, so fun.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And there's so much. And I didn't want to read your bio. I would like you to share your journey, where you've gone and where all that stuff to come to where you are today, where we're speaking about what we're going to speak about today, if that's possible.
Absolutely. So, oh my gosh. I'll give you like the elevator version of my story. So I got married. It was my second marriage. I got married back in 14, and life as I, thought it was going to be, it was, and I thought we had a great marriage and all of this great stuff. And then 4 years ago was what we call D-Day in the recovery world and betrayal trauma world. And that's where I discovered some things that had been hidden, kind of a hidden life. And so betrayal hit my world. And I had never quite experienced anything like the pain of this. And I didn't know even what to do. I didn't know what to do with the feelings I was feeling inside, which were incredibly crushing. I felt like I was going crazy. It was trauma like I had never experienced before, right? So like, what do you do? So knowing me, right, I'm like, okay, what is this? What just happened to my world? And so I started kind of researching it, and I ran across a company called the Samson Society. And it is a organization for men struggling with sex addiction. And in that, there is the partner side called the Sarah Society, and it's for the betrayed women, betrayed partners. So I joined that, not knowing what I was even gonna encounter. I was just trying to search for something to help me. And incredible, incredible group of women that are empowering, and they just really put their arms around me. And I got involved with an APSATS coach, which APSAT stands for Association of Partners of Sex Addicts Trauma Specialists. That's a mouthful, but she was an APSATS coach. So her specialty was working with betrayed women. And I remember my first meeting with her, and she made me feel so validated and seen and heard. And she told me, she said, everything you're feeling in your body, everything that's happened to you, there's a diagnosis for that. It's called betrayal trauma. And I'm like, I felt so I for the first time, I think I took a deep breath and was like, okay, I'm not crazy. There is a name for this. And so then that's what started my journey. And I got hooked in with a really amazing CSAT, which is a certified sex addiction therapist. And she has walked with me along with these women in Sarah Society. It's like your core group, right? They've walked with me these last 4 years. And my therapist, she kept saying to me, Kari, have you ever thought of maybe doing this as a job? No, no, Debbie, I have not. and no, I won't. And no, 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 I would not be good at this. And so she was just very gentle about it. And every now and then she'd bring it back up. And I started, man, I kind of started praying about it, honestly. And I was like, as I got further in my healing journey, right, and I was able to understand kind of more of what was happening, I really did feel like if I can find some good to come out of this mess, that to be able to help other people, that's what I want to do. And it became then a passion. So then I went and got my coaching license, and then I went and got my APSATS coaching training. So now I am an APSATS coach to be able to walk with other women and men. I have some men clients too, to be able to walk with them through one of the most horrific experiences that someone can experience. So that's kind of the long short of it. So
That's great. That's incredible. And you answered my question because I was going to bring up, are there men involved with this organization as well? You know, and how does that, do you do you guys have meetings with just women and just men, or are they combined? And are they looked as survivors, you know, opposed to a man, woman? And does it work the same for both, or are they a little bit different? And how working with, when you work with a man, is it a little bit different than working with a woman?
really good question. So right now the SARE Society is just for women. And there's everything that you read, all the literature, really, the pronouns are around the woman being the betrayed. But they're finding more and more that we're getting more and more men that are also experiencing this. And so people are now starting to write books for men that are dealing with this. Because really, the betrayal trauma world is still in its infancy. And so we're just now learning more and more things. But that being said, when I have a man come to me as a betrayal client, I don't look at him any differently than a woman that's come to me. He's been completely demolished. It's usually complete, they're usually blindsided. And they're experiencing the same trauma that I experienced or that any of these women have experienced. But it is interesting when I talk to my guys how men process things differently than women. And so I've told them, I'm like, so you're going to be kind of like my guinea pig because I want to learn from you. I want to learn how you men are processing this grief and how it differs from how women process it.
You know, listening to you talk, I just thought of this other idea question that I want to ask. The LGBTQIA plus community,
Yeah.
no one seems to be able to connect with them as well in situations like this. Do you wonder why is that? I mean, I even know that working with survivors of sexual abuse, a lot of them are really reluctant to talk. And
Yeah.
actually, after I did my TED talk on my story, which I think you were a part of, I lost all my gay friends of that community. It kind of like shut me down. And where are they today? I have no friends like that. And they even it reached out towards Nathan, you know,
Wow.
and he lost all his friends. And it's just kind of interesting because I just wish we could all come together and work with each other. Have you
Mhm.
experienced any of the LGBTQIA community in your work?
Um, I'm still, in relation to other people, I'm still fairly new at it, but I haven't really heard much about that, but it makes me sad because
Yeah.
they're experiencing stuff too. But you know what I do notice, and from what you just said, it's survivors. It doesn't matter if it's from sex abuse or from betrayal trauma or whatever your surviving trauma is. What is hard for me and what it's hard when I try to talk to my clients is we carry guilt that isn't ours to carry, right? So in the betrayal world, I would feel shame if I thought about leaving the marriage because people will say to me, well, you so clearly you don't value the institution of marriage then, right? So then there's like that shame that that comes, but then if I decide to leave, then there's like, oh, so you don't have any, or if I decide to stay, then people will say, wow, you have no self-esteem, that you would just stay with somebody who's abused you this way, right? And so that extra layer of trauma, that's trauma, added trauma on top of the big T trauma I'm already dealing with. And that to me that's what makes me the most sad in situations like this, when the person's already dealing with so much trauma. These outside people that will throw in their comments when they've never dealt with it, they've never been through it, they don't know the ins and outs of it. You know, Brene Brown used to say, and I love her, but she says, you need to find your front row. So if you picture a coliseum, you know, the victim, the survivor, is down in the pit with the lions, right? And they're in the fight of their life. You need to find your front row people who are safe, who will listen to you, who will be there to climb down and sit with you and hold you and maybe not even say anything, but those are your front row people who you know have your best interest at heart. The other people up in the cheap seats, they have their bag of popcorn and they're, oh, what's going to happen next, right? You have to learn to like drown those voices out and really listen to those front row people and what they're yelling at you when you're down in your fight. You can do it. We love you. You've got this. Like it's trying to just, who's going to be the loudest in your head? It needs to be those safe people. And that's what you and I do, right? That's so these people that come to me, I want to be part of their front row. I want to be one of those people that said, you know what, this sucks and this wasn't fair. This is horrible. And I know you're dealing with the emotional and the physical and the spiritual and the financial and all these different things that you're now faced with, but you're not alone. I see you. I hear you. There is hope and we'll do it together. And so that's kind of what I love so much about this job.
And it's really interesting that you say that because on your website, you have a quote,
Mhm.
holding the hope for you until you're able to hold it for yourself.
100%.
And that idea that maybe I come to you and I don't have the hope right now, and I don't know, it's not going to happen for me. This is my last chance. You're my last person. I've tried this, I've tried that. Come to you, and to have you say, "Well, wait a minute, let me hold your hope for you
Yeah.
until you're ready for it." Is that what that means? And how did you come up
100%.
with it?
Well, you know, at the end of the day, everybody is if they can just have hope. That's what we all want, is just hope. But when something like this happens, it literally crushes you. You all of a sudden have no hope. You're like, I don't know how I can ever live through this. Literally, John Michael, I'm not exaggerating. There were days where I would lay on my bathroom floor and couldn't get up for the day, crying, throwing up. I ended up getting, it's the other thing about betrayal trauma is the physical ailments that come with it. I had a bleeding ulcer that I was hospitalized for multiple times. I ended up contracting celiac disease, which I'll have the rest of my life. You know, but there were days where I literally didn't feel like I could get off my bathroom floor. There was no hope for me. That's what I felt. Then I had my APSATS coach and my CSAT that came in and said, this is normal. You're gonna feel this, but I'm here to help walk you through each phase of this grief process, which we sure wish it was linear, right? But it isn't. And so they made me understand that it was okay to grieve, even if it's like my moods would change minute to minute, right? One minute I'd be like, okay, I think I can do this. And then something would trigger a thought. And then I would back on the bathroom floor, back to the toilet or whatever. But they made me understand that this will be the hardest fight of your life. And it sure has been.
And I love that you say that because you're being so transparent. And I think a lot of people think that they just go to a therapist a couple of times and they're healed, they're done with it, they're over it, and they go on. And then there's others that feel that wave that come up and they're really in touch with it. And then they feel like they're a failure because they've been triggered again. But each of us have a unique way of healing. And
Mhm.
the healing is for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And having tools and people like you to help us understand that. What would you say to someone who comes to you and say, well, I only need four meetings with you and I'm going to be healed?
With grace in my heart for them, I would kindly say, I I would love that for you. I would love it if it could be 4 sessions. But you know what? Feeling at home in our life after a deep loss is a process. And it can take years to learn how to relate to a new world as the vastly different human that we have now become, right? So therapy, like for me, I'm 4 years in. I am not healed. I won't ever be fully healed. I am a healing person, helping heal other people. Do I still have triggers? Absolutely, yes. I wish I could say I didn't. Do I still have days where I'm struggling? I absolutely do. And there is no shame in that. That just means that you're feeling it. When you're feeling it, you're healing it. And so feeling it to heal it, nobody wants to sit in that. Like, face it even when you want to hide from it. Sit with it even when you want to avoid it. Because we oftentimes we don't want to feel the pain. We don't want to, that hurts. It hurts. Process it even though you want to ignore it. Understand it even though you want to dismiss it. Move through it even though you want to escape it. And so there's where the hope is, right? From earlier on. When a client comes to me and she tells me her story or he tells me his story, going through it, I can see the light at the end of their tunnel. They can't see it yet. So my job then is to come in and say, but I see it over there. And here's the steps we're going to take so that you can see it. And then when you can see it, you can grab that hope again for yourself and hold on to it. But in the meantime, I'm going to hold on to it for you. And I'm going to keep reminding you of it, that it is there. It's there. Yeah. So
This is kind of a touchy little question, and you don't have to answer as well. You know that. But depending on how comfortable you are, can you share your personal experience and how you became a betrayal spouse and stuff like that? Just a little bit. It does. You don't have to go into major detail, just so that people can also start understanding what betrayal
sure.
trauma is.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense. Totally. So I found out that my husband is actually a sex addict. But here's the thing. Sex addiction is not about sex. Sex addiction is about trauma that has happened to them early on, mostly in their childhood. Somewhere in their childhood, there's been some kind of trauma, small t's or big t's, right? And then the acting out process, like where they found sex, is just a coping, like a band-aid, a coping mechanism, ways they can cope with the trauma, the pain, the shame, the guilt, whatever happened to them in their childhood. That's just a manifestation of the actual addiction. So betrayal trauma is when you have been intimately deceived, right? So whether it be pornography or affairs or what have you, and it's been kept secret, it's been kept from you. And I know a lot of betrayers seem to think, well, what she doesn't know is not going to hurt her. Well, if you do any research into betrayal trauma, what we don't know does hurt us. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Phenomenal book. And so my body knew something was happening before I did. I was diagnosed with celiac disease before I knew about John's deception. My body knew. And so, so betrayal trauma then is trying to understand what has happened to you, what it's done to your physical body, what it's done to your nervous system, and also understanding what is sex addiction, like educating yourself, because knowledge is power all the time. Knowledge is power. And so So that was my that was what happened to me, was this betrayal, that sexual betrayal that happened in the marriage that I was not aware of. And so then it was up, then we had to figure out, are you going to do recovery? Like, am I going to stay? It's you get so many physical symptoms, brain fog, loss of sleep, no losing weight or gaining weight. I lost clumps of hair. I was living in fight or flight, and which is obviously very unhealthy. Anxiety, you name it, like the symptoms were that digestive issues are huge. I think the stat is somewhere around 90% of betrayed women get some type of autoimmune disease. And then if they don't get themselves safe, emotionally, physically safe, it goes into breast cancer, which is another really big stat in the world of betrayal trauma. So it's not just, oh, my husband cheated on me. That's not, it goes so much deeper than that. It does such a number to your body. And so part of my job now as an APSETS coach is to obviously help them know that I see them, I hear them, I understand on a soul level what they're going through, but then to also kind of educate them. How do we get you safe? What does that look like? What boundaries do you need to set for yourself? What are your core values and when you set your boundaries? How do you regulate your nervous system? How do you keep yourself safe? And so that's a really big part of working with them at the beginning. And then you move into grief work, which is, can take years, because that's pain. That's just a
Right,
lot.
right. Also, the shame and the
Yeah.
guilt, feeling that it is my fault. I caused this to happen and I deserve this, and that whole spiral down. And it's really funny that you talked to, I spoke speaking to a young man named Ronald Howie from London, and he has got this new philosophy that if you listen to the body, then you can change the mind. And it just blows my mind every time I think about it and hearing stories. And I did a conference the last 2 days, and every time I heard people talk, I was like, listen to your body, then you can
100%.
change the mind. It's just brilliant. I
I
thought that was
say
great.
that I say that a lot to my clients. I'm like, I need you to just be curious. Where are you feeling that in your body right now? Where are you feeling it? So let's notice where you're feeling it. And then what can we do with that? How do you regulate your nervous system? I mean, there's modalities like tapping and EMDR and brain spotting and just self-care, things you can do for self-care. It sounds like selfish, but self-care is something we preach so much. It's so vital for women to be, and men to be able to understand, like, okay, I think I was just triggered. My heart is racing, like I'm a little shaky, like my brain isn't thinking clearly. And then we go into the neuroscience. So, I mean, I could talk for hours about the neuroscience part of the brain and what's happening in, in your brain physiologically that explains what you're feeling in your body. It's fascinating to me, but that's where
Yes.
you can educate the people so that they're like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Because I feel like we've been taught the wrong things,
Oh,
as we've grown up. Our society's been telling us what we can believe and what we don't believe, and da 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 da. And I find it fascinating that the neuroplasticity of our brains can keep growing until the last day that we die. It's still alive. And people don't think that. That's so against what we've been taught.
yeah.
Your brain only grows until you're 20 or something like that. No,
You
it
can start
continues.
making new markers in your brain.
Yes.
And do you know what I just found out? I found this fascinating. Jake Porter is the like OG of betrayal trauma and sex addiction and stuff. Anyway, he said to me a couple weeks ago that when you start to make new habits, when you start to try to think differently with intention and focus, and your brain literally like puts a marker there. And he said, if you don't get enough sleep, because when you're sleeping, your brain goes back and says, oh, there's a new marker there. I'm going to start making a new thought process, a new neural pathway there. But if you're not getting the adequate amount of sleep, it just goes like it never happened. And I was like, fascinating. And so, like working with betrayed partners, when we start to come up with the boundaries that they need in their marriage, if they decide to stay to keep them safe, one of the boundaries for their husband needs to be he needs to get adequate sleep, because if he's in recovery, those markers are being placed in his brain. He needs to get sleep so that it takes hold. Does that make sense? Like it's just the brain is fascinating to me.
It's so fascinating, and in a way, it's so simple as well, and yet
Yes.
we make it so difficult. I want to jump back to you're talking about your experience, and you had mentioned that, and I'm not saying about your husband because I don't know that story, but that some people who are addicted to sex, or sexaholics, or whatever you want to call them, have had some kind of trauma or trigger as a child, maybe, or when they were younger,
Yep.
and they never got the help that they needed.
Yep.
And so then somehow this, can you explain? And also, are there places for these type of people to go to get the help? Because I think I'm sure there's resources, but
Yeah.
until I started talking with you, I had no idea about, this whole betrayal trauma and stuff. And I was like, what?
I'm telling you, and like I said, really, we're still kind of in the infancy stage. Like this is kind of a newer field. So, okay, so a kid, it could be that there was sex abuse, right? Sexual abuse as a child. That literally stunts their emotional IQ. Okay, so he could be a 52-year-old man today, but emotionally he's stuck back at a 12-year-old or wherever that trauma happened. And so the shame and the guilt and the fear of what happened to them as a child, whether it be sexual abuse or neglect as a child, or just a parent that wasn't attuned, because children need attunement, right? They need their caregivers to be their outside nervous system until they can learn how to regulate their own nervous system. So when there's a trauma like that happens, the child is searching for safety. He's searching for some kind of band-aid to fix this pain that he's feeling. He doesn't know that it's trauma. And so it could be that he comes across gambling. And all of a sudden, like, oh, that made me feel better. And then it becomes that addiction. It could be he finds, the J.C. Penney's catalog and there's women, and okay, well, that just made me feel better. It's that dopamine hit. It's the dopamine hit. And so it could be sex, it could be gambling, it could be alcohol, name your addiction. That's where addiction comes from, is some trauma that's happened that gets them stuck. So is there help for them? There are so many great places. I can name one specific. There's a place in Colorado called Boulder Recovery. It is a phenomenal place. It's an intensive where men go for 2 weeks, where they go back into their story and they deal with their family of origin, and they deal with that trauma that happened way back when, that has been stuck inside them, that has caused them so much shame and so much pain that now their life is spiraling out of control because they haven't had the right help to get them to unleash all of that and feel it to heal it. They haven't had that. Boulder Recovery is one I would highly recommend for men, or it's just a men's program, but there's a lot of different places people can go to get that type of help. But if you can't afford an intensive, I would recommend highly getting a CSAT therapist, a certified sex addiction therapist, because they are trained in this addiction specifically.
Just brought up a question in my mind. If I was the person who was going through that, say the male who, but I don't have any idea that I have an addiction, or I have totally denied it in myself, how do you talk with them and convince them that they need to get help?
A lot of times when men go to like a place like Boulder, it's because the wife has said, you're going to get help or we're done. So a lot of
Right.
guys that show up there are there because it's like, well, my wife's going to kick me out or whatever, or maybe he's curious as why he's been doing all of this for so many years, or so he might not understand like the sex addict term, but he knows that he knows that there's an issue going on that he doesn't like. He hates it. They end up hating themselves because their addiction is so painful to them in the long run, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a sad story
Oh,
because a lot of times, if you are a survivor of, say, sexual abuse as a child, you may not even acknowledge that until you are in your 40s or 50s. And some are even in their 60s before they realize it. And by that time, without you even realizing, sometime you could be hurting so many people along the way
yeah, you've left
and not even aware that you're doing it, and I'm not trying to defend these people or people who are in this. I'm just trying to make sure that people understand that, in the sex abuse world, we call them predators. And sometimes I just wonder, is that the right word? That could be a harsh word. Maybe they're not even aware that they're doing it. And people are saying, no, they have to take responsibility. Yeah, they do. But first they've got to acknowledge it and agree that that's what it is. And so I would like to hear, if you can, share some signs for a woman if she realizes that she is in such a relationship. What are some of the signs that she could, like, wait a minute, we need to talk about this?
Mhm. Um, so I really believe that women are born with a gut sense, right? We really have that knack. And I know I did. And I started noticing that I wasn't trusting my gut as much, and I didn't know why. There were things happening in our marriage. I didn't feel as connected. There were excuses for things. Things weren't adding up. He wasn't where he was supposed to be, or just like things that would set off a red flag in my brain. But I would be like, that's not him. No way. That wouldn't, right? And so just, your husband, your wife, whoever you're married to, the ins and outs. And when things just don't, when you have that gut sense, listen to your gut. Your gut is right. If you feel your gut is off, then you're right. And that's the other thing that happens in betrayal trauma. The addict becomes so good at manipulation and gaslighting and minimization that you start to question your own reality. They're very good at that because they don't want to get caught. So that starts to strip us once again of our gut instinct that we were so good at. And now we're questioning everything because no, that didn't happen. No, I didn't say that. And so you're like, what am I? It does a number on our brains. That's for sure. So I would
Yeah,
just listen to your gut. If you have red flags about something, follow up.
but I think you hit something that's so important, and I want people to be able to hear that, is that yeah, we have these gut instincts, but if you're being gaslit or you're being told that you're not, it's not like you just hear it one time and you think, oh my God, this is over a period of time.
Oh,
This is a
years.
grooming process in the
Absolutely.
sense that they get you to that point that you start questioning everything. And what I think really happens is it pulls you from within yourself to an exterior look for acknowledgement and support. And so you start focusing on that person to
Yeah.
get that help. And
Yeah.
then that acknowledgement and told that you're okay. And you're questioning your own idea. Am I all right? I need you to tell me those, I think, are things that I think people should think about and stop and go, whoa, wait a minute. But it is a process. It doesn't happen just overnight. And what's
No.
really crazy from listening to you today, I feel like that person who is doing that thinks that they've got it all over you already.
Mhm.
And they think that you're going to believe everything they say.
Yeah.
And what's happening is they start slipping up.
Yes.
And that's when the things start not adding up. So I think that's something that's really interesting. And I think what you're saying to us is we need to also go back within ourselves to trust and listen to that instinct that's down there.
Through
How do
betrayal
you do
trauma.
that? How do you bring yourself back inward opposed to, so a lot of survivors are always very external, looking
Yeah.
for approval, looking for acknowledgement. I need you to tell me I'm okay. When if we could go back within ourselves, we can tell ourselves we're okay.
Absolutely. And that's part of what APSATS coaches do. That's what we work with them on, because they steal so much from you in betrayal. They take away, like, I remember I had zero self-esteem. It's like, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm clearly not enough. Why did this happen to me? Clearly it's me. So we lose our sense of self. We lose our purpose. We lose our self-esteem. We lose it all. And so when a coach can come in and sit with her and say, I get all of that. Let's start to learn how to get your power back, use your voice. It doesn't have to be nasty, right? Let's put some boundaries, some guardrails around you that keep you safe. And then slowly she starts to re-emerge. That woman that was lost, it was taken from her through this trauma. We start to pull her back and she starts to see it, and then she gets stronger. And it's a beautiful process to watch. Someone who comes to you, snotty nosed and, crying and on the bathroom floor like me, to getting where she's like, hey, Kari, I'll get an email. Hey, Kari, those boundaries we went over, that was really hard, but I did it. I'm so proud of myself. And so then I just want to be like, I do a happy dance on this side of the screen, because my people they're getting it, and they're starting to feel that sense of like, I am enough. I am enough. I can do this. And that's where there's that light at the end of the tunnel. They're starting to see it, right? It's so incredible, but it is such a process. It is such a
Yes.
process.
And it's really interesting when working with the people that I work with, when we start, they're all gung ho and they're all ready and everything is working perfectly. It's that honeymoon kind of moment and everything's, and then all of a sudden everything seems to drop out and they bottom out, and it's like, this is when the work is starting. This is really where we're trying to get to. And I had this moment when I was running this morning that I thought, what if these moments when, like watching the Olympics, I'm bawling my eyes out,
Of course you are.
national anthem.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I did not get to go to my Olympics because, of the situations. But the point is that these emotions seem so raw.
Yeah.
And I thought, what if this is the true meaning of healing? What if this is where I needed to be instead of this feeling confident and I feel like I'm in control all the time? But it's this rawness, it's right there. And I think that's what we need to celebrate. And I don't think people talk about that enough. And I think what happens is people get to a certain point, then this starts to happen. They get scared because they're scary feelings. They really are.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
we back away from it and we go back to where we were, that we know we're safe, or we think we're safe, we're comfortable with it. It's our normal life. That's what I'm supposed to mean. This is what God sent me to do here. I'm going to be this person over here. Unfortunately, the real person is over here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a process to try to get the person to understand that there is strength in vulnerability, and you can be
Mhm.
vulnerable and you can be real with somebody safe, because there can be more trauma if you unload your story on somebody who's not a safe person, who's not going to be able to get down in the pit with you and be your front row and not be back here eating the popcorn, right? So if you can find that safe person to be able to share that story with and really be vulnerable, that's where the healing is. And they say addiction is created in isolation, but it's healed in community. Safe community, that's where it is. And it's for the betrayed partners as well. Who is your community that you can get on Marco Polo and say, I've had a really bad day, or text somebody or call somebody and say, I'm really struggling. This just happened. It triggered me. This is what I'm feeling like. It's your community, and it's being given the permission slip to be real, to be honest, to be sad, to be angry. It's okay. I'm going to sit right here and let you feel it, because there is no shame in it. and you are safe here. And I see you and I validate you.
You said something the other day, and I can't remember their actual quote, about actually acknowledging it and then dealing with it or something like that. That you
Healing
have
it
to,
or feel it to heal it.
maybe that you said that earlier today as well. And I think that's such an important thing. And I just wanted to share this really quickly. When I started the Self-Talk Institute, the person that I started working with me literally sat me down and looked at me and said, listen, the event happened. There's nothing we can do about it. It is done. It is over with. It
Yeah.
is the what you keep putting the meaning onto that that is
Right.
carrying you forward and
Yeah.
keeping you in that stuck place and feeling
Yes.
as the victim.
Yes. I mean, a lot of people have trouble healing, not because they don't want to move past the pain. They would do anything to move past that pain. It's horrible, but because we get so caught up in figuring out why it happened and trying to prove to ourselves that we didn't deserve it, because we didn't, that our focus is more on the why, and that's what's keeping us stuck. It happened. We don't know why maybe it happened. This was horrible. Let's acknowledge that, but then let's take that acknowledgement and not stay in victim mode. We're not healing for them. We're healing for us.
Right.
We're healing for us. And so that pain that happened to you, that will be forever woven in the tapestry of your life. And the back part, like tapestries, if you ever look at them, they're so beautiful in the front. I mean, ornate and gorgeous. But if you flip them over, it's a hot mess back there. I mean, it is messy and it's ugly and it's horrible, but both are true.
Right.
This horrible stuff happened to you and it will always be there. But what is the beauty that can come when you flip it? It can be beautiful, but it's the process of trying to get to the beautiful that is the hardest part. But you know, like I said, when we met before, you break a leg, you go into surgery, you get, you stitched up and it is painful. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. But you do what you need to do. You go get the surgery, you get the pins stuck in, you get the stitches and all of that, and then you heal. And you go through the healing process. It's not quick. And then you're okay. You feel like you're okay. And then the weather turns bad and it's cold and it's rainy and you feel a little tinge and a little pinch and you maybe have a little bit of a limp. And that's survivors. It's like we've been through this horrible pain. We've gone through the surgery. We're doing okay, but we have a little bit of a limp. But we learn to dance with the limp. We learn to create a new life around the limp. And if we could just get every survivor to get to that point where they're like, I can dance with the limp. It's going to be okay.
And dance with a limp on a rainy day. And the thing is also is that limp may not be noticeable to anyone else but
Oh,
yourself.
and most of the time it isn't.
You know, that tiny little thing, oh my God, it's so we have no idea. And that's the beauty of it all.
Well,
You
and
know,
there have been so many people that have said, I had no idea you were going through that. I had
yeah.
no idea.
I'm
And
one of those people, Kari. You
yeah,
know, I've known you since what, 2015, and I
yeah,
didn't know because
yeah.
every time I met you, you had it all going. You had everything that everybody wanted.
Well,
You know?
luckily I have acting ability. So, but it's such a it would be easier for me to say my husband's an alcoholic because that's socially acceptable.
You're right.
Sex addiction is a very intimate deception and it's very personal and it's very intimate and we carry so much shame around it. Like you're married to wow, like what, were you not serving him enough? Like, were you not, like, what's wrong with you that
It
he went
becomes
out
back
and
to your fault. It becomes the woman's fault still because our
absolutely
society is going to say the guy is going to, you know, boys are going to be boys. That's just the way it
right,
is. We accept it.
right.
They're going to, you know, the good old boy club is like, you go, you got how many? Oh, does your wife know? No. Oh, you're awesome.
That's
We
right.
cheerlead that.
And
We
then
see
now
it in our
let's
films.
look what's happening to the woman at home who's on the floor with a bleeding ulcer, who can't figure out what to put on in her closet in the morning, who can't even think like what to pack in her child's lunchbox because her brain is so, she is so traumatized and her nervous system is so upset and she's living in fight or flight. I mean, it's hell.
And it's easily looked at as she's just being so dramatic.
She's
She's
too
just
much.
so dramatic.
Really,
Just
yes,
chill, you
correct.
know? You're making
This
things out of
could
a
not have been
molehill.
this.
All those excuses.
And
So
that
it's
just
just
adds more trauma and more shame onto the woman that has been completely destroyed. Her whole life has been blown up in front of her face. And it's this, I remember when this happened to me, I heard a podcast where they were talking about the addict and the betrayed partner and how when D-Day happens, when discovery happens, it's like you and your husband is standing inside your house and your husband lit it on fire. Okay? Because he did. And you're standing in this fire and people are calling the fire department and the ambulance and all of this, and the husband is the one that needs the help. He's the addict. He needs recovery. Go to this meeting, go do SA meetings, or go to an intensive, or go to see a CSET. And so the ambulance come by, picks up the husband and drives off with him, and the wife is now left with the rubble all around her from a house that just burned down, and there's nobody there for her because he's off getting all the help that he needs. Who's there for her? And she's that, I've got the kids, I've got the house, I've got the dog, I've got myself. I don't know what is my name even? Like, I don't understand. And that's why I do what I do now, because I remember being that woman, having no clue, gets me teary, no clue what to do. And then I had help. I had a helper come in and grab me and say, you're not alone. You're not alone. I see you. I hear you. I validate this. I'm going to help you. And that was, I can't even describe like how life-saving that was for me. And so I take it very seriously when clients come to me. I'm so honored that they would choose me to help them walk through this horrific experience with them. They trust me with that pain, that intimate pain, that they're not going to tell somebody else.
I love that. And I was just, like I said, at a convention just those last 2 days. And one of the questions that were brought up to me was from a frontline professional. And they're like saying, well, we don't have a lot of time to talk to these people when they come into the emergency room or whatever. And what are we supposed to do? We are understaffed or all that. And all I said was, put yourself in their shoes. How would you want to be treated? And when people go to someone like yourself, and I'll put myself in there, we come in with a different agenda because we were that
Yeah.
person sitting there. We
Yeah.
know what they're going through.
Yeah.
And we believe and we're here, we listen, we're right there for you. And I think that's really important. And I think people who are looking for someone like you need to make sure that they're like interviewing you if you're a fit for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So many people go to a therapist because they're told they have to go to a therapist. They pick one out and they go.
Yeah.
But they don't interview them. And
Right.
then they don't get the help they need because it's not right for them.
Yeah, and that's one thing I do. When somebody reaches out to me, I always have a complimentary first meeting, Zoom meeting. They kind of tell me what they want to about their story. They get to meet me a little bit. And then I tell them, if you feel like I'm the right fit for you, we can get you on the schedule. But I feel like that's important. You need to feel safe with who you're telling this story to. And you need to know that they have the right credentials, that this is what they're trained in. And my therapist told me, bless her heart, I love her so much, but she said, you now have all these letters after your name, but the most important letters are betrayed spouse. That's the most important, because the people who come to you are going to be like, she gets it. It's like the Me Too movement of betrayal trauma. I get it. You don't even have to describe it. I get it. I get it.
Got it. All right. What would you want to say to someone who is questioning if they should come visit you? You know what I mean? I think you've already said a lot of that today,
Yeah.
but just to pinpoint it and basically say, this is what you need to do. Like you said, you already said, if it's not me, find someone else, or maybe I can refer you to someone else.
Yes.
I know in my situation, I will work with a woman, and all of a sudden at the end of the first event or meeting we have, she'll say, John Michael, you're a really nice guy, but I want a woman.
Sure.
Definitely, let's get you one, you know?
Percent. I would just tell anybody who's dealing with this and has questions and doesn't know where to turn or what to do. What do you have to lose? Number one, we love you. We want to help you. We understand this. And I know you are terrified. You are so scared. This is so painful, but there is hope. There is help. And if you go to apsats.org, it's just APSATS, apsats.org. They have a registry of all of the APSATS coaches in your area. So if I'm not your fit, then hey, you know, most of us work via Zoom, so we can work worldwide. I actually have a client in Africa, go figure. But so if I'm not a fit, or if you want a man, we have men coaches. We have APSATs that are men. And so if a man wants a man, hey, absolutely. I know some people, I can put you in touch, or you can always go to the apsats.org and find, you know, all of the APSATs coaches that are listed in there. But in order to get healing from this, you cannot do this alone. You can't do this alone. You really need somebody who knows the ins and outs of it and have been trained in it, so they can walk with you and really help you get the most out of your healing.
May I add with that, you have to want to do this.
You do.
You have to choose to go in through this.
Yeah.
Don't do this for someone else. Don't do this for your husband or your wife or whatever. Do it for you.
Yeah.
And you have to make that choice. And that's the first step of taking your power back.
It is getting your voice back, figuring out who you are again, because you've lost it. But I will tell you that every betrayed woman I have met when I was on my journey, when I joined Sarah's Society, those women and the women and men that I work with now are the most amazing humans on the planet. These people have been through this horrible trauma and they are still fighting for their marriage, for their husband. They're the kindest souls. And that's hard because it's like, how could somebody do this to you? I don't get it. I do get it, but
Right.
these women and men are incredible human beings, and it's an honor to be able to go help them rediscover that.
It's fantastic. If someone wants to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
So you can email me at heartofhopecoaching@yahoo.com, or I do have a website. It's heartofhopecoaching.com. Heartofhopecoaching.com. That's my website. My email is heartofhopecoaching@yahoo.com. So yeah. Oh, somebody just thank you, Becky. She put my website in the chat.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. So yes, I would be happy to talk to anybody and refer people out. I actually also have a lot of references that I can refer their husbands to somebody. I can refer them to a CSAT or a coach to help them with their addiction.
Oh, you know, there's a couple of messages in here I just want to share with you.
Okay.
Carrie says, Carrie is just an absolute ray of sunshine.
Oh, thank you.
Kelly says, Carrie, you are admired by so many and such an incredible and courageous woman. I am a huge fan in capital letters.
Stop it.
Here's a question we have. How do I identify a trusted adult?
As a coach, like for a coach, you want to find somebody who has the credentials behind their name. And if you're dealing with betrayal trauma, you really want to find either an APSATS coach or a CSAT therapist. If you find an APSATS coach, I can promise you those people are amazing. And nobody goes into this business just thinking, you know what? I think maybe I'll work with betrayed people. Like that's what I want. There's a reason we're in the field. So the people that you work with in the APSATS community will be very safe, adult,
Oh,
trusted.
this is interesting because the person added to it. Thank you, Leah. I'm 15 and I go through stuff at school.
Okay.
So how does she identify a trusted adult when she's 15?
Person. Okay. Well, do you have any trusted adults in your life that you feel safe with?
It could be a
School
teacher, it could be
counselor,
a coach or counselor, anything. But
principal, somebody like that. And if they're not qualified to help you with whatever you're struggling with, I'm sure they have resources to be able to refer you out to somebody who can help you with what you're struggling with. So,
teachers literally see it all the time, but they do nothing.
and I'm so sorry that that's
Yeah,
happening to you because that's not helping. That's not teachers and principals and school counselors are put in that position to be first responders to
right.
their students, right? And we're meant to be first responders. And is it Leah? Is that who her name is, Leah?
I believe so.
Yeah, so I don't know if your parents can get you in touch with a therapist, a qualified coach, or a therapist to walk you through some whatever it is that you're struggling with. But first, I would just find somebody that you know you can trust, that you know is safe, that has your best interest at heart, and see if they can't help you find the person that can walk you through your struggle.
Great. All right, we're almost out of time. Any closing statements you would like to make? And thank you so much
No,
for being here.
I'm just honored that you would want me to do this. Again, like I told you at the beginning, I'm not an expert. I am a betrayed spouse that is still healing too. I'm on my own healing journey. But it's an honor that you would ask me to come on and just maybe hopefully help somebody else find their next right step in their healing journey. And I count that a privilege.
And you're doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.